Viewers, Divya has worked in the advertising industry and helped build brands by understanding consumers for the last 18 years. She's worked with the best multinational companies, JWT and Lolintas. And worked on category leaders, category challengers, category creators, whether it's Unilever or Diageo or any other. So it's a real privilege. We'd be listening to Divya's views. So Divya, first of all, I'd start with a category which I feel is very challenging category to advertise in our country. Could you share any of your insights while you were working on Antiquity, Black Dog, Signature, all these brands? How did you witness any trends, insights that surprised you and led to any innovative marketing tactics?
Okay, so like you said, Jasravee, it is a very, very challenging category. Challenging because it's also one of the most regulated markets, and actually the regulations also change state to state. The brands that I worked on were very vast. I worked on both beer as well as whiskey. Yeah. And it was very interesting because, on one level, yes, it is kind of prohibited and you have to be very careful. Yeah. The other thing was also, what I found was with USL Diageo, which was the main client, as well as the UB group. I found that, the companies themselves were a little ahead. Norms of what we can say and can't say and where we can advertise and what we can do were actually more strict than what the government would have prescribed. So that was quite inspiring to see that, that kind of, internal restrictions were there in place. So for example, the USL Diageo had their own internal code of conduct, and every year they did a workshop for all the marketing teams and the agency teams to refresh that code of conduct, to make sure that everybody knows what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do.
Could you take an example on, what kind of code of conduct? Because, liquor category and being so responsible is very interesting and very useful for us to know.
Yeah. So for example, they actually had a ban on things like, in FMCG, buy one, get one is a very common kind of a promotional tactic. That's something that the liquor brands I worked on refused to do, because that would encourage irresponsible drinking. So they didn't want to be in a position where they could be, held responsible for leading consumers astray. If consumers want to drink, we can't really control how much they're going to drink, but we are not going to be encouraging them to kind of overdo it. So that was something which was very inspiring. And then it helps you work on the brand also, because that everybody has the same kind of code and ethics and integrity, and you want to do the best for your consumers. You don't want to do bad for your consumers. So that was one very interesting thing. In terms of the challenges for marketing, because it's not so much about the product and you can't really talk about the product, it became more about the occasion. Each brand and each product actually had this kind of space of, this is my consumption occasion. This is the mood that I want to be a part of. So either to be, matching the mood of the consumer at that occasion, or maybe even creating the mood for the consumer, so whether it is celebration, which is a great space for beer, or whether it is, even in whiskey, I worked on two brands which had actually very different positioning. So Signature was all about, celebrating achievements and, accomplishments, and for people who are kind of on the move, to celebrate the fact that they're moving up in life. Whereas something like Black Dog, actually for people who also were achievers and had also got certain accomplishments, but it was for those moments of contemplation where it's a much more intimate setting and it's more introspective, and so you're trying to create a mood for the product to be consumed in, and that was a very interesting thing. So you move away from the product and you're creating kind of an atmosphere and ambience for it.
In this COVID year, I know you're not associated right now with the brands, but you have a deep understanding of the category. If you had to think about and share with us how these brands are adapting to the changed circumstances, because everybody in the crazy COVID year is either making safer choices or down trading. So how do you think, and also the fact that online events are happening, actual events are not happening, which is typically used to generate trials, as well as engage the consumer. So
the thing is, like, you can't do events, so at home consumption, but typically none of these brands have encouraged at home consumption. If you see all the alcohol brands, including competitors, they always show it in an out of home context. Nobody really shows it being consumed at home. So that is something that they have to think about, because the mood that they've created and all is all outside of the home.
Actually, and this is very interesting that out of home consumption moods have been associated with these brands so far, and everything, whether it is exercising or celebrations, everything, home has become the destination. So it'll be very interesting to see how, at least for now, the brands adapt.
Right.
Like you were saying that these brands have been very cutting edge and taking on the latest tools in the marketing toolbox. And I've also seen that you have a fascination for everything neuro, Divya. You've studied neuroscience, neuroeconomics, and neuromarketing, and I'm sure you've used it also. I want you to share, for our viewers, how do you put it in perspective that neuromarketing, do you think it is an added asset in the toolbox? Does it provide any extra precision?
So first of all, I have to give credit to all the alcohol beverage brands that I worked on for my interest in neuro, because they did test a lot of things through neuroscience. And one of the reasons is that, like I said, you don't talk so much about the product in this category. Yeah. So what you're selling is basically imagery, emotions, moods, and those things are very hard to measure in a rational way. In market research, we always look at system 1 and system 2, right? Mm-hmm. So system 2 is what consumers will say, what they will do, and what things that you can measure and try and be rational about. But we all know, even somebody with 2 years experience would know, not necessarily as much experience as you have, but even somebody with 2 years experience will tell you that just because they say something doesn't mean that is true, right? Yeah. So, system 1 is very important. The unconscious responses, the unconscious attractions that we have, the desires we have, those things are things which, even if we were to look at ourselves as consumers, we are not able to explain adequately. Yes. So I think neuroscience comes in with all those implicit testing. So while we have projective techniques and we have a lot of other tools which help us kind of get to the deeper things which, consumers themselves are not aware of. Yeah. I think neuroscience is very exciting because it's evolving with brain science, So, those methods are now becoming more easily available. So with EEG and eye tracking and all of that, you can actually measure and see which areas of the brain are getting stimulated. Yeah. And the evolving brain science is telling you what those areas of brain are associated with. But it's a good addition because it kind of helps explain the things which we don't really know as yet. And for categories which are not very rational themselves. So, nor are we marketing it on a very rational level. Yeah. Nor are consumers consuming it on a very rational level, and therefore, you need to measure that level. You can't be just measuring the norm. So it's not like I there are 10 benefits of the product. I've explained it in the ad, and then the consumer has to play it back to me. Here the benefits are very subjective, very emotional, and very difficult to pinpoint.
Yeah. So has there been a moment where you felt that, this is something that only neuromarketing could have told?
Okay, so my experience with neuromarketing is limited because I've not done the neuromarketing myself. It's very technical, so obviously I'm not in a place to do it. But I've sat through a lot of reports and explanations with the neuroscience team at Nielsen. So what they do is they actually have a doctor who studies brain science, who is a part of every presentation, so he can help answer questions and help clarify things. So I really like their approach. Mm-hmm. I value that kind of collaboration and partnership.
Right.
Some of the things, like when you're watching an ad, so like I'll talk about ad testing since both of us are familiar, and that is where more of my experience is. So, when we are testing an ad, and remember, an ad in a liquor space is about a mood and a emotion and a moment, and it's not really about the product at all. There's very little rational information in it. Yes. So, what Nielsen Neuro actually uses a combination of eye tracking and EEG to measure the response to the ad. And what they do is they'll of course take a very large sample and then average it out, and then that's how you can interpret the data. And what they do is very interesting, is they have a moment by moment analysis. So they'll play back the ad, and as they're playing back the ad, they'll have some critical measures like engagement or attention or things like that, and it'll go up as a graph. So you can actually see in the ad which are the moments that are getting that where attention is spiking, and which are the moments where attention is kind of faltering. And while obviously you can't know, you know, as a storyteller also, you would know you can't have an ad that is high attention all the time, because then there is no surprise, there's going to be very little persuasion. But the interesting thing is that when you know that the attention is spiking, you can actually make sure that your branding is prominent at that place. You know, so I know that this is the high point and this is where the consumer's attention is maximum. So at this point, I make sure that my branding is also prominent, and I know through eye tracking that, you know, which are the parts that they're looking at, and that is where my brand needs to be placed, or, you know, so it kind of helps us monitor and understand. I found that very exciting, because this kind of precision you can't get through, you know, normal qualitative and quantitative testing.
Right. You've been writing a lot, Divya, and I've read some of your articles, and we've had discussions about Byron Sharp and his book as well. What is that one thing that you felt most useful in terms of his perspectives?
So actually, I'm a big fan of Byron Sharp, and the reason for that is actually because, you know, everything he says and does is all based on empirical in-market data.
Yeah.
So first of all, he has not done market research separately. He has tested market data. And all these big companies like Unilever and Diageo and all of that actually share data with his university. So it is all based on data. And if it's based on data, in fact, you can't really throw it away and say this is not working. So, you know, he's not saying anything which he's not tested out and shown. You know, it's a very simple thing. Like, you know, if you travel, like I have a few friends, we travel every few years together. And one of the things is we are all fond of food, and, you know, it's very important that we eat at the right place. You want to try all the local food. And, you know, my friend always says that, you know, the best way to choose a restaurant is to see that, you know, that it's occupied, that there are a lot of people there. If there are very few people in the restaurant, then let's not go there, because it's probably not good. But a restaurant where there are a lot of people will be very good. And that's exactly what Byron Sharp says. You know, he says that popular brands tend to become more popular. And the reason is because a popular brand is always the safe choice, right? It's like Bata, right? I remember the first time I went abroad and I saw a Bata shop, and I was shocked. I was shocked that I thought Bata was an Indian brand, and it's not. You know, so you know, the thing is, it's familiarity. Popular brands build familiarity, and they also build trust and credibility. If so many people are using it and they seem happy with it, then it can't be a bad choice. It's a safe choice.
Definitely. And this whole debate about distinctiveness and differentiation, that you know, distinctiveness matters, differentiation doesn't. And I know you have a strong point of view on this. Would you like to share that?
Yeah. So I think see, it's important to be like, for example, Pepsi and Coke, right? You know, we know that in blind taste tests, and I found the same thing with whiskey, that when you go to the actual consumers, they don't really know the difference between their preferred brand and the brand they say they don't like in a blind taste test. You know, yes, there are experts and there are connoisseurs, and they would be able to know the difference, but most consumers don't know the difference. This is sweeter and that is not sweet, and this is bitter, and you have all those things which you talk about. But the fact of the matter is that it's not a perceivable difference if I don't know actually what brand I'm thinking. So the reason the consumer is choosing the brand is not the actual differentiation. What the consumer is choosing is the distinctiveness. Because when I drink a Coke, I feel a certain way and I feel I'm part of a certain community, versus when I see, or when I drink a signature whiskey or a black dog whiskey, I feel like I'm, you know, it's kind of reinforcing if I have about myself. So distinctiveness is important, because distinctiveness you can't copy. Differentiation can change very quickly, right? We know, especially in this era of technology, you know, your competitors can catch up with you very quickly. I remember, you know, there was a time when we were growing up where there was a clear difference between an Indian brand and a foreign brand. You know, there would be a price difference, of course, but more than the price difference, you know, you would know in the product quality. And today, some of the Indian brands have overtaken the foreign brands in quality, because, you know, that technology is available to them and the price difference is not that much, you know. So, you know, you can see that today differentiation can build distinctiveness. but distinctiveness is going to be what will, it's like what Martin Lindstrom calls the smashables, right? It's like he says, if you can break a bottle, he thinks the bottle of Coke is very iconic, the glass bottle that they have in the US. He's saying if you smash it, with every piece, you can still tell that it's still a Coke, and that is what distinctiveness is. So you need those kind of brand assets so that consumers can associate with you and say, okay, this is my brand. And it also becomes a choice, a reason to choose the brand.
So it's something that the consumer can perceive. You might have built into the product, but if it doesn't reach the consumer, it doesn't build as a consistent association in the consumer's mind, then it's not there. Right. Now we move to another chapter of Divya's career. It's a Unilever brand, Rin. And, it's a long association, and we want to benefit from your understanding, Divya, of how the middle class has evolved. So what we find very interesting, in case of Rin, not just in the way they are advertising, even in the variants that they have come up with, like the smart home technology or the antibacterial variant, or talking to young adults, it's very different from how the middle class home care brands would be, communicating and who they would be targeting.
So actually, Rin is a brand which is very, very close to my heart because I loved working on it. I had the best teams, best clients, the best bosses on this brand. So it was an amazing journey. And I think also the consumers, I think this brand team was a very good example of putting the consumer first and center all the time. So all of the things that you talked about which make the brand distinctive are actually decisions that were made very consciously because they were keeping the consumer in mind all the time. So Rin as a brand actually is very, very anchored towards serving the lower middle class consumers. And one of the values that the brand shares with the consumer is ambition. The lower middle class over time, so in India, it's currently on an upward trajectory. And what we found, like, when I first started working on the brand, the consumers I was meeting were a lot poorer than the consumers I had met so far. And I was a little apprehensive, because, coming from the kind of privileged backgrounds we have, you kind of cringe a little bit when you have to see somebody who is not having the best life. And so the consumers just blew me away, and I found them so inspiring because, they did not look at their life circumstances the way I was looking at their life circumstances, They, so first of all, they sensed the mood of the country, and they were seeing opportunity everywhere. They were seeing the economy opening up. They were seeing opportunities not just in education, but opportunities outside of education appearing for them and for their children. And one of the big things is that, all the reality shows that were kind of taking off at that time. So Indian Idol, Kaun Banega Crorepati. I don't know if they intended it that way, but that's certainly the way these programs have evolved, that a lot of the contestants who tend to come from kind of underprivileged backgrounds, people who've not had the best of opportunities, and yet they have this amazing talent. So all of this was firing the imagination of the lower middle class. So it's not that, my child has won Kaun Banega Crorepati, but the fact that my child could, somebody like my child is winning all this money, somebody like my child is winning all this opportunity, somebody like my child has, got this amazing career in singing or dancing or acting or in sports. You see all the stories of the sports, the athletes of India who have, come up, whether it's in shooting or wrestling, So all of this had fired the imagination of the lower middle class, and I found them very, very aspirational. So they weren't looking at the current reality. The current reality was one better than where their parents were because things have improved in India. Lifestyle has become a little better, but also they were also seeing where they can go. The family's ambitions tend to be centered on that young person, so the mother may be buying the laundry detergent and washing the laundry and all of that, but all her ambitions are centered on the son or the daughter who's going to wear that shirt and achieve big things for the family. So, that was one of the reasons of showing that, because if you wanted to, showcase and celebrate their ambition, you needed to show it on the person whom it was most appropriate. And
yes, I can changes everything. Like just the being able to see a possibility and having an ambition changes everything.
Right.
And until
Right.
unless we mention lower socioeconomic class, this could be said for actually any person in the world.
Yeah, it can be said about anybody in the world, but the beauty of it is that this group really has the drive and the hunger. It's not the same for somebody. Somebody like me, I also have an ambition. I also want to achieve it, but I don't have that underlying desperation and urgency that they have.
Yeah.
And that really makes them, it kind of drives them to a level which probably I don't know if I can even go.
And yeah, I'm completely with you, and thank you for contextualizing and nuancing this so beautifully. Yeah.
Yes. And also one more point about the younger people in this segment. They have grown up in a world which is different from the world their parents were a little afraid. They kind of grew up in this very this very class-based system, very conscious of their limitations, very conscious of their boundaries.
Yeah.
Whereas this generation has grown up in a much more democratic, far less apologetic than their parents. They are actually much more assertive, and they feel entitled to the rewards of their labor. So they are not that bade baap ki bigri aulad kind of a thing where that things will be handled to them on a platter, and they don't expect that. But they certainly expect that whatever work I do, it is going to show some reward at the end of it. So while luck is important always in India, they don't rely so much on luck as much as they rely on themselves, and that's actually quite inspiring to see.
Yes, that changes the whole game of life, actually.
So yeah, you wanted to know about the variants as well.
Yeah,
the RIN variants. Yeah, so like I said, this team has been very, very customer focused. So like for example, water saving makes a lot of sense for RIN. Because water problems are an issue. Water supply is an issue in a lot of the country. So a lot of consumers, the water supply is inadequate, or it's hard water, it's not soft, it has a certain problem with it. The other thing is also that laundry is a very water intensive activity. So, out of all the things that they do in the house, probably it takes the largest amount of water. And so giving them a water saving variant was actually a very good solution to a problem that they were facing. So having a water saving detergent actually makes a lot of sense for them, because they can't afford to pay premium after premium for tankers of water to be delivered to them just to do the laundry.
Yeah.
Similarly, a washing machine variant, because as the penetration of washing machines go up, and like I said, this is an aspiring class, so they are not limited. There was a time when I remember when I was growing up, my mother would say, we are upper middle class and this is the brand we'll buy. So that is why you have those tiered things. But today consumers are not limited by their price bracket. We go up and down very easily. So a very rich person might still buy a discount detergent or a discount toothpaste. They might drive a Rolls Royce, but they might use the cheapest soap that they can find. It doesn't matter. And similarly, even upward mobility is also possible. There are EMIs, there is easy consumer finance. So if you want something now in today's India, you don't really slot yourself that way. You manage your budget by kind of going up on some things and going down on some things, but you certainly there's nothing that you cannot access. So and especially in detergents and FMCG products, it's a one-time put-down price. If for 1 month the consumer wants to stretch and buy an Ariel or a Surf Excel, they'll do that. You can't really dictate to them. So if that similarly, they can get consumer finance and they can buy washing machines. And we did see that in this consumer segment, people were buying washing machines. If you're buying washing machines, you need to upgrade to a detergent that will work with the machine. The same detergent will not work with hand washing as it works with a washing machine. So or else the washing machine could get really spoiled. So it just made sense, as this segment, as our customer segment is buying washing machines, then we need to give them a washing machine variant.
So you've written about Divya brands for positive change, and this is something I'm also very passionate about. How brands can plant ideas and messages in the consciousness of the society, and make little movements towards something beautiful and nice. Although it has to be in their DNA, and they have to walk the talk as well.
So I think one of the things is that a lot of people accuse us advertising and marketing people of relying on gimmicks. And I think that is a very good test for all of us. Am I doing purpose as a gimmick, or am I doing it really because I believe in this purpose? And I think that's a very big test. And I think the second thing is that, which will help us pass this test is that is my purpose aligned with my business? If purpose and business are going to be at loggerheads with each other, then at some point you are going to compromise on one or both. And that's not a great idea, and then you will come across as a gimmick, because you end of the day, business is something that you cannot completely avoid. It is something that it's the reason for the brand being in. If the business is not working out, the brand is going to die. So as I see, a purpose is also internally motivating. We all like to believe we're doing something to make the world a better place. Now nobody is sitting here like an evil villain of a James Bond movie saying, oh, I'm going to just get money and not. I don't think anybody in the business world works like that, though the media likes to portray it as that sometimes. So if the purpose is aligned with the business, so like my favorite example of this, and now again it's something in hindsight seems very obvious and genius, is Lifebuoy. Lifebuoy for many years has always had a health positioning, and that's a brand that has been very good at consolidating and building this positioning slowly over time. So they've had hand washing campaigns for a very long time. They were trying to save lives of children through from communicable diseases like diarrhea by teaching them to wash hands. So they have been doing this for a very long time, and I feel it's not, they might do a one-off kind of a thing to get attention, but it doesn't feel so gimmicky, because at the end of the day, their product is fulfilling their purpose. Every child that a Lifebuoy has taught to wash their hands in school is somebody whose health has changed for the better, whose family's health has changed for the better. So, that is very difficult to show. Now in the COVID situation, when a Lifebuoy comes and says, I'm going to teach you to wash hands, it comes from a position of such strength and credibility. A brand that never ever talked about hand washing or health to suddenly come and say, even if it is a soap, to suddenly start talking about hand washing, it feels very gimmicky. It's like you're just coming on the COVID bandwagon, Whereas when Lifebuoy says that they come from a great position of credibility, they've been talking about hand washing for a very long time. And I feel the most brilliant thing was they showed their dedication and commitment to their purpose by ending their communication by saying, wash your hands with any soap. It doesn't even have to be a Lifebuoy. And that shows the commitment of the brand to the purpose. Lifebuoy, like any other brand, does want to build its business, and it's not going to give that up. But at the same time, it's so committed to its mission that it's saying, what, do it. I would love it if you did it with my product, but even if you do it with another product, it's still going to save your life and my purpose will still be fulfilled. So, I think, you can't talk down to consumers and you can't fool consumers, and we are all consumers, so, David Ogilvy used to say that, the consumer is not some random person. The consumer is your wife. Today, we are all the consumer. And if we are all the consumer, then we have to know that, we know, just how we can test a person's sincerity in what they're saying versus what they're doing. The same way, and brand activities cannot be hidden in today's world of Google and everything. Everything is accessible and available. So people can look into and investigate your motive.
And when it comes to communication and, brands making a positive change through doing more of certain things, would you like to talk about a few things here?
I feel like a lot of brands are able to, with very small actions, are able to make social change happen. So for example, you and I both worked at Low Lintas at some point. I didn't work on the brand, but I always admired ICICI Prudential, because it was a brand that very early decided to bring women into the financial conversation. And it kind of like, again, it seems prescient now because, so many women are on the top management levels of banks and financial institutions. Whereas at the time when they started talking, they weren't there at that time, So it's like, I think brands have to be a little bit more forward thinking and think about the brand, the world that we want to live in, And, one example which really changed my mind. So it's a brand I worked on, but I worked on for a very short time. So I can't take credit for any of the work there. But, Fair and Lovely, I worked on it for 9 months. And so I didn't want to go, I wasn't very happy about working on the brand because I was that typical elitist, privileged person, So I've grown up in the North, and as you know, in the North, this thing for fair skin is very, very strong. And though in a general term I don't look it, but compared to my mother and my sister, I was always the dark one in my family. So I have grown up with those, that bullying and teasing that happens with dark skinned women. You kind of get ignored and sidelined, and the fair child will get all the visibility and attention and all that. So I had this thing of I rejected it. And when I started working on Fair and Lovely and I started meeting those consumers, I feel consumers really teach us a lot, as much as we would like to think that we are, until we learn about them, we can't do anything to kind of help them.
Yeah.
So I realized that, I had that privilege because every opportunity in my life was not dependent on how I looked. So it was very easy for me to reject and say, to hell with it, I'm never going to use a Fair and Lovely, and I'm never going to try and lighten my skin because, it's somebody else's standard of beauty. It's not my standard of beauty. But when I met these women, they didn't have that privilege and that position and that background. So for them, opportunities are very, very hard to come by, and they didn't see beauty as something they wanted in and of itself. So for example, if you and I are doing something for beauty, it's probably just to feel good about ourselves in that moment. But for them, they did really saw beauty as a stepping stone to better opportunities, because beauty gave them that visibility. Yeah. Beauty gave them access to those things which they didn't have access to otherwise, and that was very interesting to me, because now I think things are very different from what they were at that point. When that beta ad came out and all of that, at that point there was still a huge distinction and differentiation between a man and a woman, especially in that milieu. And today I'm sure things have changed. So while I've not looked at it for years and years very closely, but I can see at a macro level things are changing. Today women in Punjab, in a lower middle class background, are aspiring to become police officers. And there are women in UP and Haryana who are aspiring to become athletes and wrestlers and shooters. And all of this is happening not by fighting with their family and being rebels, but for the full support of their family, because they see this as an opportunity for their daughters, and they want their daughters to have those opportunities. Yeah. So I feel like things are changing, and I see the shift now today from Fair and Lovely to Glow and Lovely. I think that shift has been possible because the brand very subversively and from within the mainstream has slowly been shifting this perception. Slowly, if you see the whole historical reel of Fair and Lovely advertising, you will realize that, what started out as seemingly very, playing into the gender stereotypes and thing has slowly and subversively been pushing it at, a word at a time into a more positive direction, and just the fact that it's like, Ekta Kapoor serials. They look very regressive from the surface, but when I was studying them for the brands that I was working on, because all the women used to watch those serials, you find that actually they felt empowered by those serials, and very small empowerments from the kind of clothes they started wearing to even larger empowerments. Today, if you talk to any woman in the lower middle class, the first thing she will tell you is that, mothers-in-law are very different today. They are not like those Saas Bahu serials mein jo vamp hoti hai. They are actually very supportive and encouraging of their daughters-in-law, and that when a woman gets married and goes to a house, that becomes her house, and she starts calling the shots. So I feel that changing things doesn't have to be very controversial and rebellious and in your face. Maybe the Indian way of changing things is slowly and surely, and in ways that people feel comfortable moving one step at a time rather than making a drastic change.
It's a very feminine way of changing, where you're kind of doing it with harmony rather than confronting and, making a sudden change. And, I've also had a brief association with Fair and Lovely, and I have seen girls write letters of gratitude to the brand, or, of how it opened up their mind to what was possible. Just this hope that, I can. Very recently, when the Black Lives Matter episode had come up, there was a lot of criticism of how a big brand such as Fair and Lovely is reinforcing a stereotype as, putting fairness on a pedestal. What do you feel about this controversy? And although the Fair and Lovely has been making a change, we know that in very small steps, they've been conscious of it rather than being an external agent of change. They've made the protagonist, the empowering agent, and so many other little changes. The context, the situation, how the girl is portrayed. Millions of changes, and we can't even begin to imagine how difficult it is for the brand, But still, if you had to wear the other hat and, play the devil's advocate, do you think there is any justification in the criticism that Fair and Lovely is inviting?
So I think, the biggest change that Fair and Lovely has made is the change of the name. And, you and I have worked with Unilever. We know that they must have done a lot of research to figure out if that name change is going to ruin their business. And just the fact that they've been able to change the name of one of their biggest brands tells you that there is a shift that has happened in society that has made it possible. Anybody who's worked on the beauty category, every brand in the world that is selling a product in India, or in fact, not even India, Asia, has a whitening variant. Okay, so they may not call it Fair and Lovely, and they may not shout it from the rooftops and sell fairness. But if they want a business in this segment, they have to have a product that gives a skin lightening effect. And as long as consumers want that skin lightening effect, that business is going to be there. So in a sense, brands can hold a mirror to society, but ultimately we also have to fulfill the needs of society. And so somewhere you have to kind of make that distinction. Should a brand be perpetuating and saying, no, only fair women are beautiful? Of course not. And that's something which Fair and Lovely over time has changed before. Again, they have changed before consumers have told them to change. But can we force consumers to, can they now suddenly have a cream that makes you 2 shades darker? I don't know what the market will be for that. Somewhere we can keep showing a mirror to society. How much society is going to change is not completely up to us. So, like you said, the feminine model works, of changing it slowly. I also happen to be a great admirer of Ariel's, Share the Load campaign. Again, it showed, and this is not the low middle class. This is the upper sections of Indian society, the rich people, where women are already working, they've already broken glass ceilings. And, it showed such a beautiful mirror to us, saying that, no matter what the woman achieves outside the house, inside the house, her place has not really changed that much,
I think that's
and it told them
example. Yeah,
and it told the message in such a nice way. Again, see, I think that Jhanda Garna doesn't work. Say that then you're creating enemies, you're creating camps of people, and then people feel compelled to defend their point of view. Whereas this kind of a thing says, what woman wouldn't like a little bit of help, whether she's working outside the house or not. And especially in this COVID situation, I'm sure, I've heard lots of stories, especially of younger couples, where, I see my male cousins are learning to look after the children, learning to wash the dishes. We are all doing more than we did before, because, now you realize what the work is. You didn't realize what the work was before.
This campaign, Share the Load, what I love, when I first saw it so many years back, it really moved me. And what really impressed me about this campaign is that it went to the source of, like a lot of times it's such a blind space. You don't even realize, all the educated men who think they have given it, a lot of opportunity, they've ensured education for their daughters. Nobody realizes that it is still so lopsided and done so beautifully that, people like us who come from privileged backgrounds, like you said, and got all the opportunities, and who have their dads as champions, and who want their daughters to be ambitious, even they have set a role model for us, which is not a very, very nice role model in terms of, how much the man helps in the house.
Right. And also the thing is that, we can't get change if we make somebody a villain. The example of Fair and Lovely and the example of Ariel shows me and teaches me is that, change doesn't have to happen in a revolutionary manner. It doesn't mean you have to kill the old gods. That we're all human beings and we all contribute to the biases and the stereotypes. So men as well as women, in the Ariel I had, the big realization comes from the mother-in-law, But the change in behavior comes from the son who actually decides, look, I'm going to do this. But he decides for himself, because he's not, just because he doesn't do the laundry doesn't mean he's a man he's a horrible husband who doesn't love his wife or anything like that, right? It's all grays, shades of gray. And I think, as much as the world is trying to be a better place, I think even brands, we need to take that stance where we are changing from the inside. We're not different. We're not judging you and, looking at you from outside and saying, you are wrong, now do this. Nobody responds well to something like that.
Okay, that was very interesting. Okay, Divya, now we are moving to the authoress in you. Could you please share with us what that topic is and what is the genesis of that idea?
Okay, so my book is on Indian corporate culture.
Okay.
And it's interesting because it's not my point of view. It's not a book that I'm writing just basis my experiences. I've actually done market research on this topic. Okay. And I'm going to share the learnings from the market research along with my opinions and my experiences.
Right.
So corporate culture is something I've always been very curious about. What happened to me reached maybe my typical midlife crisis where I started feeling very burnt out. I felt very stretched. And what happens when you're tired and stretched and your health starts suffering, you start thinking of, oh, I'm being exploited and this culture is so toxic. And, you start blaming everybody else. We have this victim mentality, which very easily tells us that, everybody else is to blame and poor me, I'm just, caught in the middle. Yeah. And when I finally took my break and I started sorting out my health, I had a lot of time to introspect. And I realized that I have a huge contribution in whatever happened. It wasn't like something happened to me, but it was something that I allowed to happen, and maybe I played into it as well. And then I became very curious. So I said, I always felt that this is that ourselves as a consumer target we don't know enough about. And then I became curious because I said there are a lot of people who thrive in what happened to me. I couldn't handle the situation, but a lot of other people thrive in this situation. So what do they know that I don't know? And as I started doing my research and I started figuring out how to write, started improving my skills, I came across this quote by this Nigerian author called Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And she says, culture does not make people, people make culture. Yeah. And yet we pretend that, we don't have any control or agency over it. I think that sounds, now in retrospect, after all of this journey that I've gone through, I feel like it's a cop-out,
Yeah, so sorry to interrupt you, Divya, but this is a very big shift in how we are looking at corporate culture then. Because typically, yes, when you take up a new job, the advice is, observe, watch it out. What is the culture? Because there's a lot of unsaid things going on, right, and then step into it, like the Bahu getting married into a new family. Yes. It's like, okay, just figure out, yes, the power equations, figure out who does what. And then, without disturbing anything, just, kind of, right, adjust and accommodate. And then, right, after a point in time, when you get the keys, then we'll see. But, as of now, just step into it.
I love that analogy. That's so perfect.
It just came to me.
Yeah, it's totally perfect.
Yeah. And
you're just trying to fit in rather than figure out that can we have an impact. It's like, no, I keep fitting in, and later on maybe I will make an impact.
Yeah. There's also this, like you were saying earlier, that we are not, a professional is not that much aware of what they want from their work life. What is their relationship with work? So right, what is it that you want people to start questioning from their own selves, so that they take on the responsibility of their own career?
So I think, I would hope that, at least 3 basic questions everybody would address, and not address now and at one point, but keep addressing, because, as life changes, as circumstances change, our needs also change. So, we need to stay in touch with this throughout our lives rather than as a one-time thing and then stick to it, right? Mm-hmm. So the first thing is, what is really important to me? What are my values? What are my priorities? What is it that I want in my life? What is it that I don't want, Mm-hmm. And the second part is, therefore, what is the life that I want? Mm-hmm. What kind of lifestyle do I want? What do I want to look like? What do I want to feel like? What do I want people to see me as? And the third part is, therefore, if these are my values and priorities and this is what I want my life to be like, what is the space in my life for work? What is it that I'm expecting from my work to bring to my life, and what it is that I'm willing to give from my life to my work? So in terms of my decisions and actions, how do I want to design or create my work and my life? Because, the truth is, today, thanks to technology, everything is very blurred, and thanks to working from home and COVID and everything, they've got even more blurred.
Yeah.
So we don't really have that luxury to say this is work and this is life and they're 2 separate silos of my life. They are not, and their impact on each other is going to be more, not less, as we go forward.
Now, of course, there is soul searching required from individuals. They have to answer certain questions. But what would you say to the corporates what kind of sensitivity the corporates need to have, the HR needs to have, and I'm sure in some of the good organizations it has started, and if you have any examples, but what should corporates do in terms of their relationship with an employee?
Yeah. So I feel corporations' hands are also tied because a lot of times they have very good intentions, but the policies don't really translate because sometimes the culture works against the best of intentions. So what I have done is, like, I don't feel completely qualified to kind of give this point of view and this give a clear suggestion here.
Right.
But I have a team of experts who are advising me on this book.
Right.
So I have an expert in HR and organizational behavior, Mr. R.R. Nair. He was the HR director of Unilever, and he is currently a consultant. I also have Mr. Ashok Kapoor, who was the president of USL Diageo and is retired and is a business consultant now. So he has the leadership point of view. And I have Kalyani Kapoor, who is a psychotherapist, and she has, in addition to a private practice, she also has she does a lot of workshops for YPO and EO forums. And I also have an architect who is an expert in workplace design and interiors called Rohit Krishan Gulati. So these 4 people are actually going to give me the expert point of view basis the research learnings that I'm sharing with them. There may be good things also. It's not all bad, I'm sure. But if you ask a German person who works in a big company there, or you ask an American person, they will not tell you that we are slaves to the company. But an Indian will always say that, And I saw this was one of the first things that I noticed, because I have friends across industries, and they all work with these global teams. And I will often hear that, I had a call at 11:30 in the night, I had a call at 5:30 in the morning. My call is scheduled for 2 a.m. Now what do I do? Now, I never heard any of them say, no, I can't do it. Whereas they would never dare suggest such a time to a German or an American or an Australian colleague. Why? Because those people don't accept it. They don't see themselves as slaves. They don't see work as a 24/7 thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people I met in my research actually had aspirations to go abroad because they wanted to escape this. They said, when you go abroad, people are not as committed as Indians, we are very committed people. They are not that committed to work. So in a way, you're looking down at them, but you're also saying, but they have work-life balance. They're able to have families. They're able to do other things with their lives. They're able to have hobbies. And we don't have any of these things here because the culture over here is different, So who has made this culture? I mean, there are people in India who have drawn up boundaries, who say that, 6:30, Ashok Kapoor, when I was talking to him about his career, he has told me that, he used to leave at 6:30 on the dot every day. And, if anybody asked him, his work would always be done. And if he had a subordinate who stayed beyond, he would say, you're not efficient. So there are people with those point of view, but they are in the minority. And it would be nice if we could understand what these minority people have cracked so that the rest of us can benefit.
I think this is a brilliant and very useful initiative, this entire book coming from a person who's experienced and challenged and was wanting to change the way people relate to their work, because there is so much love there is such a lot of self-expression, there is such a lot of value creation that happens by each individual. And if they can let go of their limiting beliefs, the invisible myths, which perhaps are not even there, and sometimes they've heard from their earlier generations, and it's just getting perpetuated. It can be challenged and thrown out. So good luck to you for this, and we really look forward to your book, Divya.
Thank you.
Okay, now, are you ready for this?
I don't know what this is, so you'll have to let me know.
Ooh, this is a machine gun, 10 gun. Okay, this is basically rapid fire questions in a different avatar. It's going to be rapid fire.
Very nice.
And if you don't answer quickly, if you think about any question, again, stay alert, okay? That this can come at you, right?
Yeah, I will save your laptop from you, Jasravee.
Yeah. So Divya, I'm going to just quickly say phrases, questions, and whatever comes to your mind, please just say it, okay? And remember, this is just by my side, okay? Favorite holiday destination?
New Zealand.
Favorite book?
Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Most appreciated dish cooked by you?
Chilas.
Is it like the moong dal one? The moong dal one?
Yeah, the moong dal or besan chilas.
Oh, nice. Okay. Most inspiring role model?
My aunt Kalyani Kapoor, she's the psychotherapist who's advising me on my book.
Awesome.
She's the most amazing person. I think she's changed my life, and she's really the inspiration behind my book.
Favorite cuisine?
That's really difficult, but I would say Japanese most of the time.
If you were a breakfast cuisine, what would you be?
Probably an egg.
Which, like any format?
Maybe a fried egg. Sunny side up.
Okay. So now I'm going to say some words, say whatever comes to mind. Laughter.
Love it.
Missing.
Well, I guess travel right now.
What archetype are you?
The fool.
Yeah? The jester.
Yeah, the jester maybe. I was thinking more in terms of tarot cards. I love the fool card. I think it just represents me.
Believer.
Yeah, maybe overly optimistic, a little naive, sometimes doesn't see obstacles in their way.
Thank you, Divya. Thank you so much for coming to Jagged with Jasravee. And Bombay or Bangalore?
Bangalore.
On that note.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jasravee. This was really fun.